Have you ever stopped in the middle of a party, surrounded by people, music, conversations, and felt like you'd rather be home with your dog? Not out of shyness, nor out of rudeness, but because near him you feel different, more intimate, more relaxed, as if the world became smaller and safer. If you've ever felt that, this video was made for you. Today we're going to talk about a behavior that many people hide because it sounds strange when said out loud, preferring the company of animals over the company of people. And no, this has nothing to do with being antisocial. It has everything to do with how you learn to protect yourself, and with the type of connection that makes sense to you. Psychology has a lot to say about this, and almost nothing it says will sound like criticism. Before we delve into these deep layers, I need to tell you something. Those who prefer animals over people are generally not someone who hates humanity. It's someone who has been hurt by it, and has learned over time to seek connections where betrayal doesn't exist, where judgment doesn't reside, where love doesn't need to be negotiated. Now let's understand this in 7 simple layers. The first thing that stands out about those who prefer animals is simple. They can be silent with them, without discomfort, without that anxiety of filling the air with words. Think with me. You come home after a long day, sit on the couch, and your cat comes and lies next to you. No one asks how your day was in a way that actually means, tell me something interesting. No one expects anything from you. The silence isn't awkward. It's companionship. This isn't insignificant. There's a real fatigue that comes from social interactions where you have to be on all the time, attentive to language, tone, what's implied. With animals, that effort simply doesn't exist. And for many people, especially those who process the world more intensely, this rest isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Those who recognize themselves in this will likely recognize themselves even more in the next point. People who prefer animals tend to have above average emotional sensitivity, and over time, this can become a burden. Feeling too much in a world that doesn't know how to deal with those who feel a lot is tiring. You absorb people's moods. You sense when someone is pretending to be okay. You notice the tension before anyone says a word. And after years of being this emotional sponge in human environments, finding a being that simply is, without layers, without games, without ulterior motives, feels like the emotional equivalent of taking a weight off your shoulders. Animals don't perform. They aren't okay when they're not. They don't smile when they want to cry. And for someone who has spent their entire life reading between the lines in people, this transparency is almost medicinal. But there's something else that sensitivity brings with it. And this is a side few talk about. Those who prefer animals often carry a history of disappointment with human bonds. Not necessarily a big visible trauma, sometimes it's small, accumulated betrayals, friendships that vanished when you needed them, love that came with undeclared conditions, family that remained silent when they should have spoken, people who promised and didn't show up. The body learns from this, the mind learns, and gradually, without you consciously realizing it, you start redirecting your affection to where it returns more simply, more predictably, more safely. A dog won't leave because you were too honest. A cat won't judge you for your past. A horse won't demand something you didn't promise to give. This isn't escapism. It's a very rational emotional response to an environment that taught you human bonds hurt. And there's something this redirection of affection reveals about who you are. And this is one of today's most important points. Those who deeply love animals often have a capacity to care that goes far beyond average. And usually, this capacity became a problem at some point in their life. You cared for people who didn't care for you. You put others first until you lost yourself. You offered your presence, your time, your energy, and eventually discovered that this care didn't necessarily have reciprocity. With animals, something changes. You still care, you still offer presence, affection, attention, but the return is immediate, genuine, and unconditional. An animal you care for won't use it against you later. It won't say you want too much or that you're too intense. It simply receives and gives back in the way it knows how. For someone who spent years learning that caring for people is dangerous, this is revolutionary. You find a place where your capacity to love doesn't need to be tempered with fear. But there's an even deeper layer to all of this, and it has to do with something most people never name. People who prefer animals often have a difficult relationship with the idea of being truly seen. Not because they have something to hide, but because they were seen the wrong way by people who mattered. They were misinterpreted, labeled, reduced to something they weren't. With animals, that risk doesn't exist. A dog doesn't form a narrative about who you are. It doesn't hold grudges about what you did yesterday. It doesn't see you through the filters of the past or the expectations of the future. It sees you now, exactly as you are. And there's something deeply healing in that. To be seen without judgment, even by a being that doesn't use words, activates something real in the nervous system. A sense of security that many people only find in these moments. It's as if the animal says, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify yourself. You are already enough as you are. The next point connects all of this in a way you might never have explicitly thought about. There's a word that repeatedly appears when researchers study human-animal bonds: consistency. Animals are consistent. They wake up every morning with the same eagerness to see you. They don't change their behavior depending on who's in the room. They don't have days where they decide you deserve less affection. They don't play hot and cold. And for those who grew up in an unpredictable emotional environment, where love was inconsistent, where you never knew exactly which version of people you'd encounter, this consistency isn't just pleasant, it's regulating. Your nervous system learns to relax around those who are predictable. And when the humans around you taught you that people are unpredictable, animals literally become an emotional anchor. This explains a lot. Why missing a pet can be as intense as missing a human. Why the loss of an animal can be destabilizing in a way that surprises even those who experience it. You didn't just lose a companion. You lost one of your most reliable sources of emotional security. And now we arrive at the point I consider the most important of all. At the heart of all this, what psychology reveals about those who prefer animals over people is something I deeply believe. These people don't have less capacity to love, they have more. They just learned, the hard way, that loving people without protecting yourself can be very costly. So love went in search of a place where it could exist without fear, without negotiation, without programmed loss. And it found it, in a being that doesn't need context to accept you, that won't leave if you have a bad day, that doesn't have a busy schedule, that doesn't know the concept of using you. This isn't weakness. This isn't emotional immaturity. This is a form of effective intelligence that few recognize as such. The ability to identify where the bond is real and move towards it. Now tie all of this together for a second. Above average sensitivity, a history of disappointing bonds, a capacity to care that was exploited, difficulty being seen the right way, a need for emotional consistency, immense love that needed to find a safe place to exist. It's no coincidence that these traits coexist. They are part of the same portrait. A person who felt the world intensely, who tried to genuinely connect with other humans, and who at some point found in animals something people rarely offer: presence without cost. And I want to be clear about one thing, because I think it's important to say out loud. Preferring animals over people isn't anyone's final destination. It's not a sentence. It's not a character flaw. It's a response. A response that makes perfect sense given what that person has experienced. What fascinates me about this behavior is that it paradoxically reveals a profound humanity. Only someone who genuinely values connection, who takes bonds seriously, who feels the absence of reciprocity with such intensity arrives at this place. Superficial people don't develop this pattern. It's almost exclusive to those who love deeply. So, if you've made it this far and recognized yourself in any part of this video, I'm not going to tell you what to do with it. That's not my goal. What I want to leave you with is a simple question to carry with you. When was the last time you felt as comfortable with a person as you do near your animal? Not to make you feel like you're missing something, but to remind you of what you are capable of feeling, of what you seek, of the level of presence you deserve, and that, somewhere within you, you already know exists. Because someone who has learned to recognize genuine love in a being that doesn't speak probably knows how to recognize its absence anywhere. And that, in itself, says a lot about who you are. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to keep receiving our content. See you next time.